Flash forward. It's a show about the Flash. Flash forward. Reading every single issue. We're gonna have a blast with the man who runs fast. Flash forward. Flash forward. Hey, and welcome to a new episode of Flash Forward. My name is Kay, and this week we're going to be talking about the next bunch of Flash issues. I think it's issues 101 to 106 and Annual 8. And that should end right before Underworld Unleashed, which is the next event that we're going to be doing. So, without further ado, let's just get straight into it with issue 101, written by Mark Waid, with art by Oscar Jimenez, who is now the main artist for The Flash, and Jose Martin Jr., who has been on The Flash for years, like a really long time. I think he's been on as long as Mike Baron, I think. So the battle with Cobra has just happened. Wally has come back from what is called the Speed Field. It would later be renamed the Speed Force, but at the moment they call it the Speed Field. And he's come back and he's got more powers. He can see the energy and he can feel the energy around him. And he can also control the energy around him. But he hasn't figured out, he hasn't figured that out yet, but he can do that. So, Wally is helping rebuild Keystone City after its destruction, and he meets with Max, and he tells Max that he feels different now because he's got all these new powers, he's figuring out these new powers, and Max says, you are, before you were at the top of the ladder, you were at the top of the rung, now you're at the bottom again, because you're learning all over again. You're effectively a new person now. So Wally heads back to Linda, and Linda's writing an article for Cobra, and Iris actually asked her not to put her name on the article, which Wally was like, oh, that's nice of her. I'm going to have to talk to Iris later and, see what's up with that, because it's a little bit odd that she wouldn't want to be on the article at all. And Linda and Wally have a little bit of a discussion about Wally's recent transformation and him coming back, because Wally has all these new powers. He's essentially, even though he's still Wally West, it's like he's been reborn. And Linda feels like that Wally has this whole new world now that she's not a part of, because she knows nothing about him, and Wally's she knows nothing about him now, his new powers and stuff. And Wally is just like, yeah, but I know nothing about my new powers either. And Linda's like, yeah, that's the thing. Until I know more about you and you know more about you as well, this is going to be really hard for us to do. I can't really handle that. And so she leaves to think to herself about it and stuff, because, she's struggling with the fact that Wally's different now. He's still the same, but, in terms of his physicality, his abilities and stuff, he's a different person now. And she just doesn't feel like she's a part of his world anymore. So Wally needs to try and, clear his head, and so he goes to find Bart, who is also helping rebuild the city. And Bart is with Jesse Quick, who is mad at Wally at the moment because he tricked her into thinking, he lied to her. He said she was going to be the next Flash, and he was just doing it so that Bart would actually try. And it worked, but now he's lost Jesse's trust. So Wally shows up to help Bart and Jesse build the city, and he tries to fix things with Jesse. And Jesse's like, look, as long as you put your trust in me and, you don't lie to me anymore, I'll work on, forgiving you, but right now I don't consider you a friend. I don't really like you. She's just straight with Wally. She's like, I don't really like you. But unless you can prove to me that you're not going to lie to me anymore, you know, I'll try. So, Jessie, before she leaves, after helping Wally, she also thanks Wally. She's like, and you also did help mend my leg. And Wally's like, I did? And he's like, yeah. Like, I don't know how you did it, and it seems like you don't know how you did it, but you did. You fixed my leg. And so she leaves, and Wally's just kind of, like, confused. She's like, what? What's she talking about? He gets upset at Bart again, because he's like, this whole mentor thing isn't working out. And Bart is like, yeah, it's because I'm not listening, isn't it? And, Wally's just like, look, I'm gonna have to tell Iris that this whole mentor thing's not working out, provided I can find her. And so he leaves Bart to help fix the city, and he goes off to find Iris. And as he's running to find Iris, he finds this intuition to use a new power, like to use his powers in a new way. It just comes into his mind, and he runs through a nearby tree and vibrates through it. He vibrates his molecules through the tree, which he hasn't done since he was a child. And then when he does it, he turns back and he realizes the tree has blown up. So at the moment, he can vibrate through stuff, but he's got so much kinetic energy that whatever he vibrates through will explode. So he needs to figure out how to dial that back so that he can vibrate through things without blowing them up. He finds Iris watching her father, her adopted father, Ira West, because Iris was born in the future, and then she was sent back by her future parents to the past, where she appeared in Ira West's backyard, and he adopted her as a baby. Because that's what you do when you find a baby in the DC universe. You adopt them. You know, Superman, Iris. So yeah, she wants to go and say hi to her adopted dad, but she's afraid that if she does, he'll die. And Wally shows up and is like, yeah, you're not going to say hi to him because you're afraid that it'll probably kill him because he thinks that his daughter is dead. And she's like, yep, that's exactly right. And also, I feel like if I say hi to him, I'm going to ruin the future. And speaking of that, I can't stay in the past anymore, Wally. And Wally's like, why? And she's like, because I know too much. I know everything about you because I lived in the future. I know everything. I know what happens to you. I know what happens to Linda. I know what happens to Bart. And if I stay here in the past, I'm risking saying something that could possibly ruin everything. So I can't live here anymore. But I also don't want you to be responsible for helping me get back to the future, because I know how much you hate time traveling. So I'm going to figure out how to get back to the future on my own. And so until I figure that out, I'm going to go somewhere else. Like, I'm leaving. I don't know where I'm going, but I'm going to go somewhere. Don't find me. Don't look for me. I'm sorry. I have to do this. It's for the sake of the future. And Wally is just like, I can't believe you're saying all of these things to me. Like, Iris, I'm going to miss you, but I understand, like, what you're talking about. And it's going to be hard, but there's nothing I can really do about it if this is what you want. And so Wally lets Iris go, and they part ways, possibly forever. Meanwhile, Ira is watching this conversation go down, so he's kind of seen his daughter leave, and he knows it's his daughter, because, you know, once you know that, you know, it's like second instinct. So it'll be interesting to see where that goes, because it's clearly being set up to lead somewhere. So Wally tests his abilities again when some builders ask him to help with their, like, scaffolding. They need some wooden planks. So Wally runs by a truck, and because he remembers back to when Cobra shot bullets at him, and he grabbed the bullets with speed energy, and threw them back. So he's figured out that he can put energy into other things. He can share his speed with other objects, with anything, and make it go really fast. So he puts his energy into these panels and then shoots them out. And that's him, like, testing his abilities. And then so now he's learnt that he can share his speed with things. And so he sees a bus going by with Linda on it, and then he figures out, this is how I let Linda into my world. And so he goes and finds Linda, who's going for a jog. And Wally's like, hey, let's go on a jog together. She's like, oh, why do you want to do that? And he's like, no reason. And they start jogging together, and Wally starts sharing his speed with her, and they start running at super speed together. And Linda just looks behind her, and she's like, what the hell is going on? And that's where it ends. It ends with Wally, giving a little monologue where he's like, Max is right as always. Power does have its price. Once again, my life has changed, and more so than ever before. I have no idea what tomorrow will bring, or how far Linda and I will have to go to work things out between us. Like every other couple, we'll just have to take that journey together, one step at a time. And that's the end of the issue. It's a really great ending, and it's really interesting how Mark has managed to use Wally's superpowers as a way to continue bridging the relationship, like bridging the current gap that is between Linda and Wally. It's pretty smart writing to do that. Like, it just makes sense that a superhero would use their powers to help their relationship with their partner, and not just through romantic gestures and stuff. But yeah, that's the end of issue 101. So next we're going to be talking about issue 102, featuring Mongol, the Superman villain. I wonder what that's about. Alright, issue 102, co-written by Jan Friedman, so with Mark Waid. Mark Waid's still writing it as well. Wally and Linda are moving into their new house, and Wally notices that Linda is currently preoccupied with what he believes is just her report, like her new reporting, like her like new stories and stuff. But that's not all that she's occupied with. She's occupied with something else that she's keeping in a file, that like a package that we don't get to see and Wally doesn't get to see. So he has no idea what's really going on, and we don't either. Like, we don't know what Linda is currently thinking about. All we know is that Linda is currently thinking a lot about Wally's new abilities and the day that he gave her some of his speed. So she's kind of been, preoccupied thinking about that, kind of ignoring him. But she also says that she needs him to be there during her, research and stuff. But he doesn't know why, and she won't tell him why. And so he's just kind of stuck in the house, waiting for Linda to tell him what she needs him for. And then the news comes on, and it's like, hey, a giant alien is attacking the city. So Wally's like, I'm sorry, Linda, I gotta go sort that out because I'm the Flash. And he heads off to go and deal with this threat. And Linda's just kind of left behind. And while Wally is out fighting this threat, Linda talks about how Wally doesn't understand the actual situation that he's in. So she's alluding towards something, and we don't know what it is. Wally goes to the center of the city, and he finds that the alien attacking the city is Mongol. Mongol is he's like an emperor guy who usually has this giant spaceship called Warworld, which is practically the size of a small planet, or like the size of a moon. And he uses it to go to different planets, grab aliens, bring them to it, and then hold tournaments where they fight each other, and then the winner will become his champion, and it goes on and on and on, that kind of stuff. And he tries to that's what he wants to do. He just wants sport, and he misses doing that, and he wants to get back into space and start doing that again. So he's attacking Keystone City to find a ship that he knows exists underground in Keystone City somewhere. Because remember the Combine, the group of terrorists that were attacking Keystone a long time ago? I think I mentioned them previously, where I was like, I wonder what happened to the Combine, because we never finished that plotline. In this issue, while Wally fights Mongol, he falls through the earth Like, he falls into, like, a crater in Keystone City. And he falls on top of a ship. And it turns out the ship was a getaway ship for the Combine. And the way we know that is because Mongol says so. And at the same time, he says that the Combine were defeated by Dark Stars in Dark Stars issue 19. So that whole plot line that Mark Waid had set up in The Flash was resolved in Dark Stars. A series I am not reading because it's Dark Stars and I don't care about Dark Stars at all. The only Dark Stars I ever read was because there was a crossover event with Green Lantern, and so I read it because I was reading Green Lantern. But I don't read Dark Stars, and it really pissed me off knowing that this plot line that I had read most of was resolved in a different series. And I'm not going to read it. I'm not going to cover it on the podcast because I don't want to. I don't want to read Dark Stars. Don't like Dark Stars. But just thought I'd let you know. Combine stuff is over. It was resolved over there. We can pretty much guess that Flash teamed up with the Dark Stars, beat the Combine. That's probably what the story was. It was probably pretty straightforward because it wasn't written by Mark. But yeah, so Mongol is trying to use this ship that the Combine left behind in order to get back into space and start terrorizing people again and kidnapping people and using them in his tournaments. And so Wally wants to stop him from endangering people, which is fair. So he continues a massive fight with Mongol, which leads down deep into, like, Keystone City where the ship is, and Wally displays his abilities against Mongol. He's a lot stronger now, so he can actually go kind of toe-to-toe with Mongol. Mongol tries to throw a pole, like a pipe at him, and Wally uses his speed energy abilities to send the pipe flying back at him, which knocks Mongol flying. And as Wally's kind of thinking to himself how awesome he is, he looks into a shard of glass and sees a face. He's like, huh? Did I just see a face? Ugh. Now, like, if I'm seeing faces, soon I'm going to be seeing little green men. So Mongol, because Wally is distracted, Mongol comes at him, but Wally's too fast, and he uses his speed energy against Mongol to send Mongol flying into a sewer pipe where he gets covered in sewage. And so that really upsets Mongol. He's just like, "Rah!" And he runs at Wally. He's like, I'm going to kill you! And then Wally uses his speed powers on him again and sends Mongol flying into the ship, which destroys the Combine ship so that Mongol can't get away, and also knocks Mongol unconscious. And then Star Labs shows up, or like the police, but these are like the next level of the police, so whatever you want to call them, the super police. They show up in these special suits, and they take Mongol to the Slab. I'm guessing they're like Slab employees. The Slab is a prison in the DC universe that holds extremely dangerous prisoners like Mongol. They take him to the Slab, and then Wally decides to head back to Linda to see her because obviously he wants to apologize for leaving her there. And when he goes back to the house, he finds that Linda is gone. And he finds the package that I mentioned earlier, and he opens it up, and there's a photo of Linda and another guy, and she's kind of leaning on his shoulder, and it says, "To Linda, all my love forever, Rick." And Wally's just like, no, don't tell me, I don't want to know. And so obviously he's assuming that Linda is cheating on him, or is like with another guy, which is the same thing. That Linda's cheating on him. I'm not going to assume that. My assumption is that this is Linda's brother or a family member. Especially because they look very similar in the photo. They're both very clearly... Linda's Korean, right? Is she Korean? I think she is. I'll have to look that up. I don't want to assume that she's Korean if I'm wrong. But they both look like... I'm pretty sure she's Korean because he looks like he looks Asian. I think they're both like they're brother and sister very clearly, or they are relatives of some sort. But we'll find out exactly the relationship between them next time, hopefully in issue 103. Alright, Flash, issue 103. This time we've got Roger Robinson as guest penciler. So all this stuff has happened between Wally and Linda, and now Linda has disappeared. Wally has found a picture of Linda and a mysterious man, and he's wondering what that's all about. But before he can continue figuring out that mystery, Wally has to go and save a bunch of hostages from this guy named Henry Castugo, who worked at he works at a rubber factory, and basically his wife, Gwendolyn, has run off of his boss, and so he's taking it out on these hostages. He tries to drop them into a vat of melted rubber, but Wally comes in and saves them all, and the rubber turns hard just as Henry goes to kill himself by jumping into the rubber. It turns hard, and so he just bounces on it, and Wally grabs him and saves him, and gives him away into the police. He heads home and he has dinner alone because he assumed Linda was just going to come back, and she hasn't come back yet, so he's starting to get worried about her, so he needs to figure out what's happened to her. So he heads off to the network studio that Linda works at, and he talks to her boss, and he confirms that the man in the picture is named Rick Shavers, and he is Linda's ex-husband. So yeah, they really were together. He works for a company known as Royal Industries. They're like a big industrial conglomerate based in Harrison, Massachusetts, and he basically had some dirt on them, and he contacted Linda, and so she went to go see him. And he's like, I don't know exactly where they are at this moment, but I do know the hotel that they're supposed to be staying at. So Linda's boss gives Wally the hotel details, and Wally heads off to go and find Linda. He heads to the hotel, and he asks for somebody under Park, and the hotel manager can't find anyone under Park, so he asks for Shavers, and the hotel manager says, there is a Shavers here, but I can't really get permission for you to go see him. And so Wally uses his super speed to figure out the room himself, and by checking the computer without the guy knowing, and he heads upstairs. The door is locked, so he breaks open the door, and he runs inside expecting to see Linda and Rick, making out or something. But he goes in, and the room is empty. It's kind of a mess. There's pieces of paper everywhere. Wally picks up all the pieces of paper and realizes that they've been, it's like paper that's been torn up or shredded, and he puts all the shredded pieces together, and it's a Royal Industries document that says the word Environ on it. And so Wally kind of puts two and two together, and he's like, whatever dirt Rick had on Royal, it probably has something to do with this Environ thing. And Wally notices a smashed mirror behind him, and he feels like he sees something in the mirror. Because remember how he saw something in the shard of glass earlier? Well, now he's seen something again in this mirror. So now Wally has to figure out what this Environ is, but he also wants to find Linda and Rick. So he goes to the police to see if anyone knows where they are, and it turns out that they found a body, and so they take Wally to to the morgue, and that's where Wally finds the body of Rick. Yeah, Rick Shaver's dead. And Wally knows it's Rick. They don't know it's Rick. They call him John Doe. Wally reveals to them who he is, and that it's Rick. And so now they're kind of suspicious of Wally, so Wally gets out of there and decides to head off to Royal Industries in order to find more information on where Linda is, because if Rick is dead, then that means Linda is probably in a lot of danger and could possibly be dead too. So Wally sees a bunch of security everywhere. It's going to be too hard for him to, there's alarms and stuff, so even if he runs at super speed, he'll set him off, so he needs to figure out another way to get the information that he needs. So he dresses up as a janitor, and manages to get into Fontaine's room. Fontaine is the leader of Royal Industries. Manages to get into his room. And he rummages through the desk, and he finds a desk that's locked. And he breaks it open, and all he finds in there is Fontaine's lunch. But then the desk all of a sudden starts moving on its own, and it reveals a staircase that goes underground. So Wally goes underground, and he finds this weird demonic, like, demon ritual underground area that kind of looks like something out of Dracula. And then he sees a shadowy figure run past. And he's like, "Hey, you, stop!" And it's like the figure of a woman. And he grabs the woman's hand, and it turns out that it's Linda. And so Wally's just like, "Linda, what are you doing here?" And she's like, "What are you doing here?" He's like, and so Wally's like, "I found the photo, I went to your boss, I asked where they were, I kind of figured everything out myself and ended up here. Why are you here?" And Linda says, I've got the scroll, I've been researching it, and these guys have been doing demon rituals. That's what I believe. But we don't know why, and we don't know what it's all about. And then she's like, "But then you barged in here and you set off all the alarms, so now I'm never going to get to the bottom of this." And Wally's like, "Excuse me for trying to save your life, and here I thought you might want my help." And Linda's just like, "Your help? Why would I ask you for your help when you never ask me for help in your stuff? You're all caught up in your own little world, too busy to help me with, like, to even offer your help. You know? Like, why should I ask you for your help when you're not even going to offer it? You don't even care." So yeah, there's some tricky stuff going on in their relationship, but they don't really have time to figure that out. Because they hear some mysterious noises coming from, like, a pot of water nearby them, and they think it's like the alarms that have been set off or somebody coming after them, but it's actually Mirror Master in the water screaming for help. And Wally's like, "Do you think he's behind it?" And he's like, "That must be who I've been seeing in these reflections." And Linda's just like, "It's definitely not him behind it, because look at his face. He's terrified." So as they're trying to look for an exit, they see 3 cops coming towards them, and Wally tries to super speed at them to tie them up. But he gets blasted back by them, and then they all turn into these demonic, dog-looking creatures, and they prepare to attack Wally and Linda, and we're left on this cliffhanger. So what's going to happen next? What is this whole mystery with, like, these demon rituals? What part does Mirror Master play in this? We'll find out in the next issue. Alright, issue 104. As we ended off in the last issue, Wally and Linda are attacked by these 3 demons, and Wally's powers, like, running at them at super speed doesn't seem to do anything, because they seem to have some kind of inertia power to them that just bounces him off. But then he realizes that, like, his ability to control speed, or control the speed of others, and infuse speed into others still works. So he's able to launch the demons at each other with speed, like, using the power of his energy. He puts them into the demons, and he throws them at the other demons. And, yeah, so he turns their inertia back against them by running around them in circles, like a cyclone, and defeats them. They turn back into normal people. Meanwhile, Fontaine learns about what's happened with Wally and Linda and how they've stopped the demons that he sent after them to kill them, and he wants to stop them from stopping him from summoning this demon that he's trying to summon. Apparently he works for this being known as, like, this person named Lord Corm, who we don't meet in this issue. But yeah, he works for Lord Corm. So Linda and Wally head to Rick's house, where it's been completely upturned, and they find, and Wally's being a little bit mouthy because of, like, the fact that Rick and Linda were married. Linda manages to find the entrance to Rick's chemistry lab because he has a secret chemistry lab under his house. So they head down there and they look around and they find all of Rick's research, where they discover what this monster is that they're trying to summon. It's called the Demonios, or Demoniacus. Demoniacus is what I think it's called. Yeah, Demoniacus is what but they end up just calling it like the Ultra Demon or the Mega Demon. So they find this thing, and then they find more research about these ingredients that are needed in order to summon it, that Fontaine is trying to get. Like Night Spew and Bacillin. And because Fontaine can't get the actual things, because these are like, magic ingredients from like another dimension, he's been using chemical versions of them instead, which is where Environ comes from. So he's been getting different sectors of Royal Industries to make these different ingredients to summon this demon, like to make these different chemicals to summon this demon. At the same time, Wally asks Linda about the marriage, and Linda says that they were only married for 2 weeks, it was the worst decision they ever made, and they got an annulment right away, practically, like after 2 weeks. They also discover that Rick discovered what Fontaine was up to, and so he started making a counterspell against the summoning of the demon, against the summoning spell. So Wally gets he runs off and he gets Barry's chemistry books, and he learns everything from them really fast and makes the chemical compound that Rick was trying to make. Like, he makes the counter spell so that they can use it against Fontaine. And they still see Mirror Master's reflection in glasses and stuff, and Wally's just like, we'll deal with Mirror Master later. Right now we gotta deal with this. Wally then says how many other secrets do you have other than this marriage? And that's when Linda gets really pissed off at him and is like, that's not fair, I'm a good person. He's like, then why are you being so defensive? She's like, I'm not defensive, I'm embarrassed that you found out about this before I figured out how to tell you myself. Yeah, she's like, I'm embarrassed that you figured this out before I had a chance to figure out how to tell you. And he's like, well, maybe we should get back to the formula. And she's like, no, you don't. You're not taking this hit alone. And then, she starts having a go at him. She's like, it's so like you to run away from confrontation. If you hadn't run away yesterday, maybe we wouldn't be in this mess. And Wally's just like, meaning? She's like, meaning that I told you I would need you to help me follow the leader. I asked you to be there for me, and you bailed. And Wally's just like, we used to be so close, and now we're drifting apart. And she's like, I find it familiar. And he's like, what's that supposed to mean? I've done all that I know how to do to bring you into my world. I want you by my side. And she's like, look, excuse me, everything is not always about you. Maybe I'm the one who created the distance. Maybe I did it to protect myself. And Wally's like, from? And Linda's like, from the fact that, Rick was also deep in science, and as time went on and he got more accolades, he had less time for me and us, and he started drifting away. And you're doing that too. And Wally's just like, I would never, listen to me, that's never gonna happen. And that's when a bunch of demons break into the room, and Wally grabs Linda and is like, alright, we gotta get out of here, let's go. Oh, and she's like, don't forget the formula. And Wally's like, yep, I won't. I wish, and then as they're running through the city, Wally's just like, I wish there were signs of, this is where a demon is, because we have no idea where they're gonna summon this demon. And Linda's like, it's probably going to be somewhere where there's a lot of people, because they're going to need a lot of sacrifices for this demon. So it turns out Fontaine is holding a celebration, like an anniversary celebration for Royal Industries. It's actually a front for a sacrifice, so he's invited all these people down to the beach as sacrifices. So Wally and Linda head down there. Linda's like, hey, can we vibrate through the crowd? And Wally's just like, if I do that, everyone's going to explode. And so they try to make their way through the crowd. Fontaine summons the demon. He does the ritual, and the demon starts appearing out of a rift. It's this giant, horrible, worm-looking thing with, like, octopus tentacles coming out of it and a bird beak. And Wally's like, crap, like, we're not going to get to it in time. I'll try throwing the chemical at it. And he uses his speed to throw the chemicals at it. And it doesn't work. And meanwhile, Linda tries to get Fontaine herself, and she just gets, like, a bunch of security guards stop her from stopping Fontaine. And she's like, you gotta stop him! Like, he's summoning a demon, he's gonna kill everyone! And Wally figures out the reason why the counterspell isn't working yet is because he needs to, like, heat up the chemicals and, like, bond them together. And so back at the rubber factory, the melted rubber solidified randomly. And Wally realizes that he did that. He was running so fast that he affected the molecules of the rubber and made it solidify without even realizing. So he decides to try and do this with the water underneath the demon that he's throwing the chemicals into, like the counterspell chemicals into. So he controls the molecules of the water and, like, speeds them up, and then makes the water start, like, boiling and bubbling, and that activates the counterspell. Like, that finishes bonding the compounds, and the counterspell is activated, and the demon is brought back into hell, or wherever it comes from. Wherever it came from. A bunch of fire comes out and pulls it back in, and Fontaine's just like, no! And then he gets knocked out by Wally. And Wally and Linda reunite, and Wally's talking about how he's just like, yeah, score 1 for Rick Shavers, I guess. And she's like, you idiot. And he's like, ooh, me? What now? And she's like, the last time, you're not in competition with my ex, alright? He's like, I didn't mean to, and Wally's just like, whatever, like, it's you and me now, like, I'm done arguing, alright? And they hug it out, and after this adventure, like, their relationship is stronger than ever now, you know? They've uncovered a lot of each other's secrets, they're learning more about each other, and hopefully it's only uphill for them now, because the last thing I would want is there to be constant drama in the relationship between Linda and Wally. I'm hoping that, like, from now on, it's kind of just, like, up and up, you know? It doesn't mean that they're not going to have their arguments and stuff, but there aren't going to be any huge secrets kept between them anymore. So there's a bit of an epilogue to this. Wally and Linda are walking through the city. Linda, her reports on Fontaine are going onto the news, which Wally is really happy about. And as they're walking through the city, they notice that Mirror Master is appearing everywhere throughout the city, and he looks terrified. Wally's like, is he up to something? And Linda's just like, I don't know, like, he looks terrified, right? And then she realizes that Wally has disappeared. She's like, Wally? And then she looks in the reflection, like, she looks into the mirror, and she sees Wally's reflection screaming back at her, and she's like, oh my god, Wally! And Wally is, like, trapped in Mirror World, I guess, and we're gonna find out what happens next in issue 105. So, Flash issue 105, still written by Mark Waid and Michael Jan Friedman, with art by Ron Lim. So Wally is stuck in the Mirror World, Mirror Master's Mirror World, but not the old Mirror Master, the new one. There was another Mirror Master whose name was Sam Scudder. I'm pretty sure I talked about him when I did the trial of the Flash, like the trial of Barry Allen, way back, because he was a part of that. But he died in Crisis on Infinite Earths, and when Grant Morrison was writing Animal Man, they wanted to use Mirror Master. They missed Mirror Master, and so they created a new one. Evan McCulloch, who is a Scottish guy, almost like Grant Morrison has a self-insert in DC, but it feels like Evan McCulloch was kind of like not a self-insert, but like definitely, they're both Scottish, and Evan McCulloch is bold as well. So there's some similarities, but obviously Grant Morrison is not a criminal and is not, I guess they just wanted to make a Scottish character because they were like, not enough representation for Scottish people in comics, so I'll make one. So yeah, Wally's in the mirror world, and he starts looking for Mirror Master because that's his only way to get out. And he finds Evan fighting a mirror beast, and he saves Evan from the mirror monster, and then they just watch it like disappear, and they're like, oh, I guess it's gone for now. Anyway, I need to get out of here, and you're gonna help me get out. And Evan is like, and then also Wally is like, how did you even get here? I'm stuck here, you're stuck here, how'd you get here? And this is where I kind of wonder, like Mark Waid isn't really keeping continuity in terms of characters knowing each other, because as far as I know, Wally West has never met Evan McCulloch. Ever. Because Evan McCulloch has never been in a Flash comic. And he wasn't, he was only in Animal Man, and as far as I know, he wasn't really used in anything else. And the only time he's ever been mentioned in Flash was at the Rogues reunion. So there's no real reason for Wally to, he talks to him as if he's met him before. It'd be different if he was like, oh, you're the new Mirror Master, I've heard about you, and now I finally get to meet you. In a sarcastic way. But no, he acts like he knows Evan, that he's faced him before. So I feel like that's a bit of a continuity thing on Mark's end of I guess he forgot that Wally and Evan haven't met each other yet. So Evan explains to Wally how he ended up in the mirror world. So he used to be with this woman, whose name was Amelia. And then Amelia died. We don't know how she died. She got shot. I think that's what it was. She got shot. He was like, it was supposed to be me. So she died. And so he went back to his lab, which was Sam Scudder's lab. And he uses Sam Scudder's research to open up the mirror world. And then he goes into it. And then he gets stuck in it because he's never used it before, and he didn't realize how complicated it was. And while he was in there, he saw a reflection of Amelia, and he says that people have doubles, and that this is Amelia's double, and that he wants Wally to help him find Amelia's double so that he can say goodbye to her, because he never got a chance to do so. But he can't find her himself. He needs the Flash's help, because in order for him to find her, he'd have to look in every single mirror. And the way that Sam Scudder set up the mirror world, it always zones in on Flash, so it makes it really hard to find other people. So he wants Flash's super speed so that, Flash can super speed and look around at all the mirrors really fast. And he's not going to let Wally go until he helps him. So Wally starts looking around in every mirror, and it's hopeless. Even at his speed, it's going to take him forever. So he's like, hey, look, what we'll do is we'll try and find this double, and then you can get to her. I'll go and see her, I'll bring her to you or something. I'll bring her in front of one of these mirrors, and then you'll be able to see her. So Wally sends the information through to Linda. He calls Linda and tells her the situation, and then tells Linda to send the information to Barbara, to Oracle. And she doesn't actually appear in the comic, but you do get to see an email of her. It's cool when characters interact, and it's not like a guest star, guest starring this character. It's no, he's just asking Oracle for help. So, yeah, he sends the information to Linda and she sends it to Barbara. And then another one of those glass monsters comes out of nowhere, like a mirror monster. Because apparently, if Wally smashes mirrors in the mirror world, they turn into these mirror monsters. And Mirror Master is just like, hey, like, if you keep smashing these mirrors, I'm never going to see Amelia. So Wally has to get Mirror Master away from these monsters because they can't destroy them. So he runs away from them. Linda brings Impulse with her because Evan requests that Jay Garrick go and find Amelia, but Wally suggests Impulse because Jay's too busy or too old. And so and he agrees to let Impulse do it. Evan agrees. So Linda decides that she wants to go with Impulse because they find where this double of Amelia lives. I keep saying Amelia, it's a double, not Amelia. So Linda wants to go with Impulse, so they go to this double's house and they find that all the windows are blacked out. And then they knock on the door and this double lets them in, and she's got like all of the windows blacked out and stuff, so you're kind of like, is this double like hiding from the Mirror Master? Like, does this double know that the Mirror Master is trying to find her? And as soon as they mention Evan, she starts freaking out, and it turns out that this is not a double of Amelia, this is the real Amelia. That's right, Evan was lying. Amelia didn't die. She was dating a psychopath, and she didn't want to date a psychopath anymore. And so she called the cops on him, and had him sent to prison. And because he was an abusive piece of crap. And Impulse starts cleaning his goggles, and he mentions how he's got his goggles, and Amelia's like, goggles, no! And she looks into the goggles and she sees Mirror Master, and he uses that. He's like, hey, gotcha! And he comes out of Impulse's goggles. And that's why he wanted Jay Garrick, because he wanted like the shininess of the reflection of the helmet to get out. But he settled for Impulse because Impulse had goggles. So Mirror Master manages to get out, and he pulls Impulse in and replaces Impulse, so Impulse is stuck in the mirror world. So Bart and Wally start smashing a ton of mirrors, fighting off like the mirror monsters, and Wally manages to find a mirror for them to escape through. He smashes every single mirror in the entire world, like in the entire mirror world, and then finds the one mirror that they need in order to get out. So, and I guess it's so that Mirror Master can't escape back if they destroy all of them. So Evan, because he's a piece of shit, starts trying to attack Amelia, and Amelia locks herself in the bathroom, and he just blasts his way through and grabs her by the hair and smashes her face against like a mirror. She's like, for God's sakes, I loved you. Stop looking so scared, Amelia. It's only me. What's there to be so bloody scared of? And he sees his reflection in her eye. And he's like, no, that can't be me. That's not me, darling. I swear it's not. I was good to you. And then Impulse grabs him from behind, and he and Wally both knock him out at the same time. And then Wally goes to continue beating on him, and Linda's like, Wally, stop. It's enough. It's over. And so, Evan gets taken off to prison, screaming about how Amelia is the woman he loves and that he's not that kind of guy and stuff. And Wally and Linda, are happy that Amelia is safe. And, that's kind of it. And Linda and Wally grow closer as well. At the very end, Wally is just like, I don't care about your past. You're still my good woman. We still a team. Always have been, always will be. And that's it. That's the end of the story. So that's the end of 105. Pretty good stuff. I'm always a big fan of Mirror Master stories. They're always really fun. That's actually the first one I've read with Evan in it. So that was my first Evan story. And it was pretty good. So yeah, the next issue that we're going to be reading is issue 106, The Return of Francis Kane. Alright, issue 106, The Return of Francis Kane. You're probably wondering, unless this is the first episode that you're listening to, why she's coming back as Magenta. Because the last time we saw her, things between her and Wally seemed fine. She seemed to, be able to repress her evil side. Because basically Francis Kane has these magnetic abilities, and when she uses them, she just goes batshit crazy evil. Last time they had a confrontation, Wally managed to pull the good side of her out. And then he was like, alright, don't use your powers anymore, and you should still be good. And she was like, yeah, I'll use my powers to get home, and then after that, I'm not going to use them anymore. But it turns out, I guess she was lying, because she's back, and she's terrorizing the streets of Keystone City, tossing cars and controlling... She's controlling a tow truck with cars all over it, and tossing them around and stuff. And so Wally is chasing after her, trying to stop this out-of-control tow truck. But the tow truck has a field around it that he can't touch. It's a magnetic field. He can't vibrate through it. He can't touch it. So he can't stop her. So he's got to figure out how to stop this truck. Meanwhile, Linda is on a date with Pied Piper and his boyfriend. Because I almost forgot that Pied Piper is gay. And then they reminded me of it in this. Because he was calling Linda, he was calling her girlfriend. And I was like, wait a minute, what's going on? And I was like, oh, that's right. He's gay, and Mark Waid is writing him in a way that he would think a gay person would talk. But yeah, it's kind of cute. It's kind of cute seeing Pied Piper and his boyfriend James. This is the first time we've met James. I think Piper mentioned him in a previous issue, or I feel like he mentioned that he'd met someone or something. But it's really nice to see that Piper is dating somebody. So Linda is talking to Piper about how her problems with Wally and how she's having a hard time being a part of his world and stuff. And Piper is just I don't know what to tell you. Wally loves you. He's trying to bring you into his stuff, into his world. You just gotta let him. You gotta... It feels to me that you're fighting against it. And that's the problem. Until you come to terms with, who Wally is. Because he's not... this is who he is. So as soon as you come to terms with who Wally is, then your relationship is probably going to get a lot better. Because he's not going to change. And as they're talking, cameraman comes in and is like, hey, Linda, Frankie is attacking the city, so you should report on it. And also, there's a parcel for this guy, Hartley Rathaway. And Piper's just like, oh, that's me. And so Rathaway gets a parcel given to him, and it's a box. And he opens up the box, and there's a candle in it. A weird green dark candle. And we'll find out what the candle means in Underworld Unleashed, because that is the setup for the next event that's coming up. So Frankie is causing all sorts of chaos. She attacks the synagogue that Wally built previously. He's like, hey, I just rebuilt that. And then, blows up a statue made out of metal. And, she's just causing all sorts of problems. And Wally tries to vibrate through the field, and Frankie realizes what he's thinking of doing, and so he grabs Linda and brings her onto the truck, because his idea was that he was going to vibrate through the field and destroy the truck. But now he can't do that, because Linda's on the truck, and he doesn't want to put her in danger. So Linda and Frankie, having both dated Wally, start having a conversation about Wally and about the situation. So basically, the reason why Frankie is trying to kill Wally right now is because she blames him for everything, and she blames him for letting her into his world and for basically pushing her down this path and like then like letting go of her. Like he basically, the last time they met each other, he was just like, all right, go off and like, don't use your powers anymore. And she resented him for that. And she blames that being the reason why she's ended up going down the path again. Because she was just like, oh, he just let me go. And that was it. And so, like, I'm angry at him. And so Linda has to drill it into Frankie's head that she needs to stop blaming Wally for the decisions in her life. Because Wally isn't making those decisions, and she shouldn't expect Wally to be making those choices because they are her choices to make. And she manages to drill it in. Like, she actually gets through to Frankie, and Frankie realizes that Linda is right. She's like, because Linda is just like, you made this choice. You chose to be evil again. Not Wally. You chose to use your powers again. You chose to give in to that side of you. Not Wally. But you keep blaming him. Stop blaming him. Stop blaming everything on him. Stop using him as an excuse. And Frankie's just like, you're right. You're absolutely right. And as the truck, like, she lets Linda go because she has Linda wrapped in like a bunch of metal and is like trying to like keeping her like crushed, like contained and like kind of crushing her. She lets Linda go, and the truck is about to go over the edge of a cliff, and Wally sees it because he's at the cliff already, and the truck is coming towards it, and he builds up a massive like barrier of logs which the truck hits, but it doesn't stop the truck from falling off the cliff. And so as the truck goes over the cliffside, Wally grabs Frankie and Linda and pulls them off of the truck, and it falls over the cliffside and explodes. Which was proven in, it was actually proven in, I think, Top Gear, that, like, cars can survive a lot more, and that, like, falling off a cliff isn't often enough to make a car explode. Unless it's, like, already heavily damaged and is, like, leaking oil and is on fire. Which this truck was not. So that's a nice little tidbit there, that cars don't often explode when they crash off of cliffs. But yeah, the truck explodes, and Frankie disappears. She took it as a distraction to get away. And Linda admits to Wally that, like, she's realized that, like, she's all in now. Because her conversation with Frankie made her realize that she, too, was letting Wally make choices for her when it's really her job to make those choices. Like, she's expecting Wally to make the choices, like, to make the choice of, like, including her in his world. But now she's realized that, no, she has to make that choice. And it's because she isn't making that choice that they're not going anywhere. Because he's already invited her in, but she needs to invite herself in. And so she's all in now. And, yeah. She's like, I'll let you be you, you let me be me. Believe in me like I believe in both of us, and together we can make any world work. And that's the end of the issue. That's the end of issue 106. But that's not the end of this episode of the podcast, because even though Underworld Unleashed is up next, I'm actually going to read Annual 8 as well, because Annual 8 did technically come before issues 104 and 105, but, like, I thought I would just leave it to the end because it doesn't fit in narratively. So yeah, next we're going to be covering Annual 8, which is part of the Year 1 crossover, like, annual slate. So every single annual was retelling, like, the first year, or like a story from the first year of a character. So this one has, I think, 2 stories in it. One is about takes place during Wally's first year as the Flash, and the other takes place during Wally's first year as Kid Flash, I think. So yeah, looking forward to reading those. Apparently, the Mark Waid story, which is the first one, is really good. So I'm looking forward to reading that. So the first story of Annual 8 is Growing Up Fast, written by Mark Waid, with art by Dave Brewer and Mark Stegbauer, who I'm pretty sure only do it for this one annual, because annuals are usually a way to promote like new artists and stuff. So Wally is delivering a package to Linda, and it's urgent. So he's like running through traffic and stuff to get it to her, and he gets back home, and he's running so fast that he accidentally knocks over a ladder. So she's just like, ah, and Wally grabs her and he's like, oh, sorry, that was my fault. And Wally's like, so what was in the package? Like, what was so necessary, like, to be in a rush for? And Linda dramatically just holds him in the air and is just like, custom curtain rods. And Wally's like, curtain rods? Really? That's what I was in a hurry to do? And Linda's like, yeah, you know, like, we need to do curtains, and I was hoping that we could put them up together. And she realizes that Wally has already put up the curtains. He's like, I thought you wanted the curtains up. She's like, I did. And he's like, so I put them up. She's like, yeah, you did. You want to do everything. We made a commitment to build a life together. Punch the word together. Punch the word together. Can we please do this hand in hand? He's like, oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Like, I get what you mean. All right. We'll start doing this stuff together. As Wally is talking, Linda is looking through, like, some of Wally's belongings, and he finds Wally's old Kid Flash costume. Not the yellow one that he wore most often, but the original one that he started off with that looked almost exactly like Barry's. Except the artist in this one draws it where, like, Wally's hair is showing. But when in the original costume, his hair was not showing. It was a red Flash costume, like just a little Flash costume. So that's a bit of an error with the artist. And then they find, like, his yellow costume, which is the one that he wore up until Barry died. And that's when Wally decides to tell Linda about one of his the last times that he wore that Flash costume, and also the first time that he wore Barry's costume. So we flash back to however many years ago, probably like 3 years ago or something. Also, Wally mentions that he became Kid Flash 9 years ago. Originally, I thought he became Kid Flash when he was like 9 years old, but I think Mark Waid is basically confirming that he became Kid Flash when he was 12 years old, because at this point, Wally is 21, and when Wally was 9, he was not Kid Flash at all. Like, he was, that was when he, like, had the party at his house, and, like, Wally came and spoke to him, like, his future self came and spoke to him. So I think it was 3 years after that he became Kid Flash. But yeah. Dexter Miles, who is the owner of the Flash Museum, is putting up a memorial for Barry, and Wally comes in dressed up in Barry's costume, and Dexter's just like, what are you doing, Wally? And Wally's like, I'm, carrying the Flash's legacy temporarily. And Dexter's like, what are you talking about temporarily? And Wally's like, I'm gonna wear the costume until Barry comes back. And Dexter's just like, Barry's dead, Wally. And Wally's just like, no, he's not dead. Like, there's no way he's dead. He's gonna come back. Like, all we found was his costume. We didn't find his body. And the only guy who said he was dead is named Psycho Pirate. So, there's no way that he's not dead. Like, there's no way he's not alive. So, I'm just gonna wait until he comes back, and then give him back the costume, and everything will be all good again. And that's when the police come by to the Flash Museum asking for help, because there's some stuff going down downtown. It's Dr. Alchemy. He's attacking downtown with his Philosopher's Stone, turning stuff into acid. And so Wally comes in to save a cop from falling into acid, because his van got turned into acid. And then he grabs the Philosopher's Stone, but because he's new to being the Flash, and this is his first time fighting Dr. Alchemy, he doesn't know that Dr. Alchemy always traps the Philosopher's Stone. So if anyone grabs it that isn't worthy of grabbing it, it'll burn them. And Wally doesn't know that, so he grabs it, it burns his hand, and Alchemy is just like, you're not the original Flash, because the original Flash knows that I do that with the Philosopher's Stone. So you're just like a fake, wearing that suit. You don't deserve to wear that suit. And he uses the Philosopher's Stone to turn the suit that Wally's wearing into chalk. And so everyone sees him in public wearing nothing but his boxers, and they all start laughing at him. And Wally is distracted by this crowd laughing at him until he realizes that Dr. Alchemy is turning the water fountain nearby into mercury. And because mercury is poisonous, everyone around the fountain starts breathing it in, and they all start getting poisoned. So Wally starts like rushing around trying to grab people, but everyone's running around in panic, so he can't get through the crowd. And then he slips on some mercury and almost falls into the fountain of mercury, which would boil him. And then green energy comes, and a giant pillow construct stops him from falling into the fountain, because Hal Jordan is here to save the day. Because this is a flashback, Hal Jordan is not Parallax yet, he's still Green Lantern. He shows up to save Wally, and then Wally is just like, hey, Geo, thanks for saving me. Yeah, we can, like, save the city together. Like, if you ever want to help, we can team up. I'm the Flash, you're the Green Lantern. And Hal's just like, yeah, I'm thinking of, like, splitting up my time between Central City and Coast City so I can protect both of them. And he just completely ignores what Wally said, and it's just like, I'm the protector of both Central City and Coast City now. And so Wally heads to the Flash Museum, where he goes to grab Barry's ring, and then Hal shows up and is like, what do you think you're doing, Wally? You don't deserve that ring. And Jay's just like, Hal, let me talk to him, because Jay Garrick is there, and he's like, Hal, let me talk to him, like, I was the original Flash, I feel like I should be the one to talk to Wally about this, and about his failure. And Wally's just like, failure? And Jay's just like, look, we've all been going through mourning with Flash in different ways, and I just want to help you get through this, Wally, but I don't think you're ready to be the new Flash yet. Because you're convinced that Barry's not dead, but he's dead, and you need to allow yourself to move on from that before you're going to be worthy of being the Flash. And Hal Jordan is just being a dick about it. He's like, I'm just angry that Wally doesn't have the courage to face the truth about Barry, or the will to press on and fill his boots honorably and honestly. And then Wally's just like, you know what? If you want to be the Flash so much, you want to be the protector of Central City, you want to be the Flash? Alright, take this ring. And he smashes where the ring is. He's like, take it. You be the Flash. I've had enough of this. I'm out of here. You know what? I'm going to just protect the city as Kid Flash, I guess. He grabs his old costume and he heads off and starts being Kid Flash again. So Dr. Alchemy is attacking people at the Central City Air Force Base. And as Wally, as Kid Flash, is heading there to stop him, Hal Jordan and Jay Garrick follow in pursuit. And Hal Jordan says that a friend of his working at the Air Force Base recently brought a meteor into the base. And it's assumed that Dr. Alchemy wants that meteor's power because that meteor is where the Philosopher's Stone came from. So Jay and Hal head straight into the building, and Jay gets stopped by tar. The floor turns into tar and he gets stuck in it. And then Hal starts breathing in like acidic fumes, which cause him to pass out. And so Wally tries to speed through to get to Dr. Alchemy, but Dr. Alchemy turns the air into like solid glass. So Wally smashes straight through it, and it injures him a lot. And tears up like his Kid Flash costume. And then Dr. Alchemy just starts like beating the crap out of Hal and torturing Jay. And Wally's just lying on the ground like, Barry's gonna show up any minute now. Like, he's gonna show up, he's gonna come, he's gonna save the day. And then he realizes that Barry isn't going to show up. And that there's something wrong about the situation because, at this point Barry would have shown up and he would have saved them. And so Wally realizes that he has to be the one. He has to be that person that shows up and saves the day. So he grabs the Flash ring from Hal Jordan's hand, because Hal Jordan is still wearing it, and he puts on the Flash costume and he punches Dr. Alchemy, and they have a bit of a fight. But like Wally is just determined to beat up Dr. Alchemy. He's just like, I've had enough. I'm not playing around anymore. I'm beating the crap out of you. Like, this is it, Dr. Alchemy. He grabs Jay and pulls him out of the tar, and he thinks he has enough time to get Jay to help, like to safety. But Dr. Alchemy is heading straight for the meteor, so Wally has to go after him. And as Alchemy gets close to the meteor, the Philosopher's Stone starts to react with it, and the meteor starts just shooting beams everywhere that start changing everything. Like, they start, like, transforming things. And so, like, even Dr. Alchemy isn't safe from this because he gets hit by the meteor beam and it turns him into Diamond. And so Wally has to grab Dr. Alchemy and get him out of there so that the meteor doesn't just vaporize him or something. And find a way to stop the meteorite. And the only way he can figure out to stop it is to just blow it up. So he grabs some condensed oxygen canisters and he throws them at the meteor, and the beams hit the canisters and they explode, destroying the meteor and the airbase. And Wally grabs Jay and Hal and rushes out of there with them. And he already bought Dr. Alchemy out earlier and saved him. And that's when Hal comes to the conclusion that Wally is worthy of being the Flash now. And he's like, if you ever need help, just give me a call and I'll happily help you. And then we get a really cool, like, recreation of issue 1 of The Flash, the cover where Wally is running next to planes. Yeah, we get a recreation of that. And so it's like, yeah, the ending shot is Wally running beside the planes. That's not the end of the story, because after that he talks about how when he first became the Flash, he was very immature, and then eventually he was pushed by the Reverse Flash to start taking things more seriously and, not be dealing with that kind of nonsense anymore, that nonsense behavior. And then he tells Linda, because he's talking to her in the present, and he's like, and I still have dreams of Barry. And she's like, what are those dreams? And he's just like, those dreams are just Barry talking to me, saying how proud he is of me, and that I'm carrying the legacy really well. You know, in my dreams, he knows that all the effort he put into Wally West finally paid out when the kid he knew finally became a man. And Wally puts his Kid Flash costume in the closet. And that's the end of the story. It was a really good story to put it. And I like how it ties into, like, it makes references to the Mike Baron stuff that happened at the beginning. So that stuff is all canon still. You know, Mark Waid doesn't ignore that stuff. Like, there's a panel where you see Wally fighting Vandal Savage, and I was like, wow, Mark Waid is referencing when Vandal Savage was a Wally West villain. But that's not the only story in this annual that we're going to be talking about. There's another one which is about Wally West as a kid when he was Kid Flash in the red costume. And that story is called Kid Flash Day 2. So this must be the second day of Wally as Kid Flash. So this story starts off with Wally sleeping in bed, and it's the day after he's gotten his powers. So he wakes up, and he accidentally hits his alarm clock off, so he has to quickly grab it. And then Iris comes in and is just like, what was that noise? You alright? And he was like, oh, it's nothing. That was a lie. And then Iris is like, we're still closer than best friends, right? And Wally's like, right. And he's like, that's lie number 2. And then he flashbacks to Barry telling him that he can't tell anyone that he is Kid Flash, even Iris. And Iris is like, so we're on for lunch, right? Here's a cab fare. And Wally's just like, I'll take the bus, it's cheaper. And what Iris doesn't know is that he's actually going to become Kid Flash and just run through the city. So he lies to her again. And actually, that was the first time he ever lied to her, was the first lie. That was the first time he ever lied to Iris. So Wally puts on his Kid Flash costume, the original one, the red one that looks like a little Flash. It's just a little version of Flash's. Oh yeah, I forgot. This story is written by Tennessee Payer, and the art is by Humberto Ramos, who does the art for Impulse. Like the Impulse series. So Wally, dressed up as Kid Flash, goes to the local museum where he finds that Dr. Element is attacking the museum. And Dr. Element is actually an alternate personality of Dr. Alchemy. They are the same guy. Yeah, he has multiple personalities. One of them is Dr. Element, one of them is Dr. Alchemy. I can't remember his regular civilian name. But the difference is that Dr. Element uses these guns that turn things into different things instead of a Philosopher's Stone. So Dr. Element is destroying the museum, and Wally comes in to fight him, and Dr. Element creates a bunch of flames, and Wally tries to put the flames out, and he's too afraid to run through the flames to grab Dr. Element, so Dr. Element gets away, and because Wally was too afraid. And so he unties the museum curator, and the museum curator says that Dr. Element only destroyed one specific thing, which was a Giardi atom, which there are 6 of them that exist, and he destroyed one of them. And so Wally leaves to go and meet with Barry, and he's afraid that Barry is going to be mad at him. But it turns out Barry is just like, glad that Wally is okay, and he says, he's like, Wally, you were so brave for what you did. And Wally is just like, yeah, brave, sure. And Barry's like, alright, I'll go and handle Dr. Element now, you don't need to worry anymore, Wally. And so Wally goes to see Iris for their little lunch date, and Iris is hovering her hand over, the flames, and Wally's just like, what are you doing? And Iris is just like, hey, if you move your hand through fast enough, the flames won't touch you. Like I keep telling Barry, he who hesitates is lost. And, Wally's just like, I could never do that, I'd be too scared. And she's like, Wally, the world is full of things to fear. You can't bow down to all of them. You couldn't live. Most of the time, you just have to close your eyes, grit your teeth, and barrel ahead. And that's when Wally's like, wow, that's the greatest thing anyone has ever told me. Oh, Wally. Did I say Barry? I think I said Barry. Wally says, wow, that's a great lesson. Thank you, Iris. And so Dr. Element is attacking another guy who owns one of those one of those pieces that he's been going around and destroying. So Wally comes in to stop him, and Dr. Element sets the room on fire, and Wally this time isn't afraid to run through the flames. So he runs through the flames and beats the crap out of Dr. Element and saves the man, and then takes Dr. Element into the police and turns him in, and basically says Dr. Element was trying to destroy 5 of these art pieces so that there would only be 1 left, and then that last one would be worth a lot of money. And Dr. Element is like, yeah, he's lying, I want my lawyer. And Barry's there, and he realizes that, Wally stopped Dr. Element, and he's like, hey, Wally, I said I was going to deal with Dr. Element. And Wally's just like, I would have contacted you once I figured out where he'd be, but I didn't know how. And Wally's like, yeah, that's a fact. I don't even know how to get in contact with Barry whenever I need his help. And so after that, Wally heads back home, where he, using his super speed before Iris gets home, creates a dinner spread for him and Iris. And Wally's just like, hey, I'm just paying you back for that pep talk. And at that point he realizes that how much he really cares about Iris, and that Iris is his best friend, and that he can trust Iris with the truth. And so eventually after this, this would lead to Flash Year 1, like Kid Flash Year 1 that Mark Waid wrote, where Iris would find out that Wally is the Kid Flash. And so, that's the end of Annual 8. That's definitely one of the better annuals that I've read, like one of the better Flash annuals, especially because it's not tied into an event, and it's just, Mark Waid and Tennessee Pear, just telling some stories about some early stories about Wally West. And that's gonna be it for this episode of Flash Forward. If you enjoy the episode, and if you're watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe. And if you're listening to this on Spotify, then subscribe to the podcast, like the podcast, rate the podcast. Episodes will upload on the podcast and on YouTube at the same time every Sunday. Next week we're going to be covering Underworld Unleashed, which is an event that released in 1995. I'll talk about it more next week and explain what it's about. There's a couple of tie-ins of The Flash that are like a part of the event, so we'll be able to talk about that, or at least one tie-in that we'll be able to talk about. And there's a couple of Green Lantern tie-ins as well, so if they end up being really important to the overall event, I might talk about them too. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I hope to see you next week. Have a good one.